All right, good afternoon once again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Channels Beings Google Plus Hangout. And today we're looking at the dangers of being a journalist, not only in Nigeria, but the world over. I have with me Mercy Abang. She's calling in from Abuja, federal capital of Nigeria, and also Joaquin Makebon, who is also calling from the capital of Nigeria, but not the government capital, the commercial capital. I'm also in Lagos. I'm Victor Matthias, and welcome once again. We're going to begin this. So just like they say, ladies first, right? So Mercy, we'll let you go first.
Okay.
Yeah, what's your take on this topic, just in the first instance?
Well, for me, when I saw the topic, the first thing that came to mind was that we have to start categorizing the hazards journalists have had to go through. Of course, people always talk about the security hazards. But again, in a country like Nigeria, we have economic hazard, we have social hazards. So we have to start breaking these things down so people can really, really understand. It's not just a one-way traffic thing where we just say, oh, well, is the security of the journalist even in the course of doing his or her job or filing his or her reportage, So there's economic hazard that is also very critical in a country like ours. So I think that's my first take to start with.
All right, so can you expatiate on that? I mean, economic people might just not have a proper understanding of that bit of the hazards.
Oh, well, economic hazards, I mean, you have journalists. I've been in the field for a while before I had to tweak what I was doing. At some point, I felt it wasn't for me. Lots of my colleagues, you work for more than 10 months, you don't get paid. Your boss tells you you have to use your ID card to get paid. And for a journalist that wants to really get the job done, that takes a whole lot out of you, and that's where you bring this brown envelope syndrome. There are lots and lots of people that would never take the brown envelope for anything, but they've been forced by the system to take it, not justifying what it should be or why people should take it, but they've been forced by the system to take it. I give you an example. I went for an assignment when I was on TV, and I wanted the press release. I got in late, and the public relations guy just looked at me and said, oh, well, journalists, I know what you guys are waiting for is the brown envelope. And I felt so embarrassed. I just left with my cameraman. And that day, I made a decision within myself that I cannot stay in a profession that looks beggarly. Let's say it as it is. Journalists in Nigeria have been forced to that situation, and that's economic hazards. We're not even talking about life insurance policies right now. We're not even talking about the other benefits that should come with the profession, like accommodation, housing, transport. There are lots of journalists, even in this town, that if they have to file that story, they find their way to the various assignments and ensure that they file the story. And people start comparing Nigerian journalists and what happens in Chibok and why the fact that they didn't go to Chibok to cover it. Is it the journalist that hasn't been fed that has to go to Chibok to cover an assignment? So these are the questions about economic hazards. The journalist that hasn't been paid in months has to go to Chibok. Again, media owners are also largely guilty of it. I've been running a platform for a while, and I can tell you clearly that I told myself that if anything takes me into the profession of probably owning a media platform, I will never owe people that are going to be working there. It's that simple. It's difficult, but we need to create this attitude of responsibility. Even if it's small, ensure that amount is paid to the people that deserve it. There are media owners in this country that make so much money and immediately forget about the journalists. They just assume, oh, well, your ID card is enough to sustain you. That's a culture we have to change, because Nigerian journalists are really, really suffering. That's the economic hazards I'm talking about.
Yeah, all right, and that was really clear and explicit and succinct. Joaquin, let me come to you. I mean, she's just made so much emphasis on economic. In your own instance, exactly, what can you tell us differently from what she just made mention?
Well, I have been fortunate to study the history of Nigerian journalism from the beginning, the first newspaper. when we talk about the way in the 19th century, and the evolution of Nigerian journalism, from the way I look at it, is not set up to deliver the service, to deliver journalism as the kind of service that is supposed to be in Nigerian society. Journalism and journalism practice and ownership of media is primarily access to power, and every other thing appears to be, how would I say, a secondary consideration, including, like she said, the payment, even payment of salaries and the work for journalists appears to be a secondary consideration when you're talking about the Nigerian journalism space. If you look from the beginning, if you actually study the history of Nigerian journalism, you find out that it is primarily a vehicle to access power. That is first and foremost. Even the business aspect of it, is secondary. Even the issue of journalist welfare appears to be secondary. And so you have a system that is not built to deliver what it should deliver in a society like this, which is to hold power accountable, which is to inform the public, which is to tell them the things that they need to know, and the things that they should hold to be very important. And so even even if you understand that things like Chibok situation should be covered on should be given wall-to-wall coverage, the issue in the Northeast should be given wall-to-wall coverage as well. You discover that Nigerian journalism is simply not set up to deliver those kinds of results. And you look at the whole space, there are perhaps one TV station, maybe 2 newspapers who are trying to do anything close to that kind of journalism, and that people need to reach. Every other thing is just set up really as an access to power at the state level and at the federal level.
All right. Just while you were talking, Mercy was actually nodding in concurrence to some of the things you said. So, Mercy, let me just, I'm sure you might have a bit of one or two things to add to what he said.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, like what Joachim rightly pointed out, if you look at the history of the Nigerian media, we find out that it was a setup by politicians just to set the agenda and also drive whatever agenda they wanted people to believe. And that's still what is obtained. It hasn't really changed even with democracy. You know, people just wanted to push for what they wanted. If you notice during elections, newspaper A is telling you 10,000 people, this party voted, this party has won. Newspaper B is telling you, no, it's this other party. There's conflict of interest. And go back and sit down and look at the ownership structure. Look at those that own these media platforms. They are all driving the agenda, you know. So you cannot take that away completely. We are not yet having media establishment as an institution to function. We're having media establishment as a form to drive agenda of politicians. Go from broadcast media, maybe except of course a station like Channels Television, which is an exemption. Go from broadcast to print media owners. As a matter of fact, almost all the print media owners, you find out that is one politician or the other that owns it. Yeah. And why is that happening? That is happening largely because they want to push for their agenda and don't care about even the welfare of their staff. Even the ones that even pay, they are not paying as it should be. You know, of course, we give them thumbs up for even trying to pay when others are not even paying, but they're not paying as it should be. For television reporters or for television workers, you already work on television, Victor, and you know what it is. You work 24/7. You work 24/7 round the clock. If you now put all of that into consideration, you ask yourself, is this it? Is this what I want? For print media guys, as a matter of fact, they've made us to start reporting press release reportage. That's what we've been doing over the years. You sit down in the comfort of your house and the PRO guy sends you email and that's what you file. And that shouldn't be. You should go to the field, you should find out what the guy is sending to you is accurate. But guess what? Look at the newspapers. Largely is what we get. These days we are basically reporting the insurgents. what do we get? We just stay in the comfort of our offices, and Major General Olukolade issues us statements, and we file what he issues us. Nobody goes to Maiduguri, nobody goes to Chibok, nobody goes to Adama, nobody goes to Yobe, you know. And we have people, we get, thank God for social media that is bridging the gap. We have people in some of these states that are now tweeting and saying, okay, this is what is actually happening, countering what we are receiving. But why should we sit down in the comfort of our zones if we are journalists and we just use press releases and file them? But again, we've been forced to reporting PR for all the major government organizations and individuals as much as they come. All you need to do, Victor, to send me a press release is to sit down and cook up something and send to Mercy, and Mercy files it and credits and say, Victor said on a Thursday, and that's it. That's not reportage, that's PR. That's PR. But that's largely what we've been doing. And why? Because we have hazards that are basically economic, and we're not having institutions that are ready to ensure they work or they function.
All right, Joachim, let me come to you now. Talking about hazards now, I mean, of recent we've heard about certain journalists being beheaded. I mean, that's to some large extent on an international stage. We haven't heard about that here in Nigeria yet, even though we had heard about, or we had a letter bomb being sent to one of the journalists in those days.
Yeah.
The trend is shaky and is dicey. Do you think we're going to get to that level in Nigeria?
The level of journalists being beheaded? Well, well, first of all, people like Boko Haram will only abduct journalists they see. Like Mesle rightly talked about. If you don't go to Maiduguri, you don't get abducted, and you don't get used for any theater kind of killing to make it very theatrical and everything, because that is basically what happens with the ISIS and the journalists that they managed to kidnap. They only kidnap journalists who went there in the first place. So if you don't go to Bama, if you don't go to Konjuga, if you don't go to Maiduguri, you don't get kidnapped, and then of course you don't get beheaded. So I think that's where that ends. So perhaps if it ever happens that we have journalists going into enemy lines trying to report, then maybe you begin to have issues of kidnapping and the like. And if any journalist ever got kidnapped by Boko Haram, well, unless the media house amount of money to get journalists alive, I don't think the person will ever come out and escape by one or the other. As you can see, the Chibok girls have been there. This is the 177 days. Even with all the outcry locally and internationally, they are still where they are. And I really doubt that the Nigerian government will bat an eyelid over a single journalist who has been abducted by Boko Haram, should that ever happen. So I don't think it's something that we want to even talk about in the first place.
Okay, so if it's not, let me just look at the. I know Mercy made mention of insurance, life insurance, and thereabout. What is different? I know to a certain extent, or to a large extent, when you try to compare developing countries and the already developed countries, there's this disparity, which is also, seen, or it can be seen in the level of the way our journalists behave and the way journalists from the other clients behave. That drive to go down there and get the story. What could you say might be responsible for this? We're kind of more laid back than they are.
Oh, well, I always use my life as an example. I've gone to file a story before. It was a riot, actually, and it was crazy. It was within the FCT. It was a suburb, and they had this local riot between the Yoruba community and the Hausa community. And I was like, woo! Then I had this ginger to file stories, and I went to file this. I went for this assignment, and when I got back to the station, my news manager went, "Where's the camera? Hope the camera is fine." He didn't care if I was okay. He didn't care if I had injury somewhere in my head. He didn't care if I was bleeding. He didn't care if my legs were broken. All he cared about was the camera. And guess what? I don't blame him for saying that. I don't blame him for looking out for the camera first. You go for assignment and it's rain, they say, please, you know what, stop recording, because we don't want our 3 million naira camera to get bad. A HD camera right now, if you have to buy it again, you have to explain to media owner what happened to that camera, you know. So it's something that you see it and you feel it within you that, come, it's not about you. Why do you want me to? Tomorrow there's another riot somewhere. I'm talking about riot. I'm not even talking about war. I'm not even talking about insurgents. Channels lost Enenche Akogu in Kano. We can go on and on. There's one NTA reporter in Borno that was shot dead. For all I care, that guy is a breadwinner in his family. For all I care, there are over 5 people that have to depend on him to survive. Yes, the Nigerian Union of Journalists keeps saying, well, we are going to pressure media owners to do this, to do that, to do that. How many of them have started doing these things? So it's more about you ensuring that you run the platform to another day and ensure that you even get in something. Private media, private stations in Nigeria have had to run on almost 70% their wage bill. They have to use it to buy diesel to ensure that the station is running. Stations like even federal government-owned media organizations like the NTA and the likes, they are 99% commercialized. They also have budget to contend with, but guess what? You don't want to see what staff they go through. Then you start wondering, if a station B that is owned by an individual, the guy is even trying to pull these little resources to ensure that the station gets to run. Because if you look at the wage bill that you get from diesel alone in a year, you go, whoa. You know, you have to have an understanding of these little things. If we have to start funding media and ensure that we have well-funded media that doesn't only survive for the next election, if you notice, there are lots of them opening up right now. And that's because of the 2015 elections, you know.
Yeah.
So if we have to start funding media...
Telegraph.
Exactly. So if we have to start running media organizations, we need to look at the long-term deal that, well, the role of the media cannot be overemphasized. We need this thing. As a matter of fact, we sit down here and say the West sets the agenda for us. Why shouldn't they? They have the platform. They have the platform until Africa, or until we start seeing the need to do that and telling our stories. Nobody's going to tell our stories for us. So it's a situation where the media owner wants his station to survive, also trying to manage those that are working there to ensure that you don't come in and destroy a camera of about 5 million, and before the guy gets another 5 million to get that camera running again, he has to owe the entire station salary for another 10 months. So you look at it.
Okay, I'm quite incisive there. So Joachim, let me now come back to you now. Where do you see the commitment, if there is any, despite these dangers that are found in the field, in your living room, where you've been sent press releases, as Mercy just said? You know, where does that commitment? Where can you pull that from? Is it even possible to be pulled?
Well, one thing I think that can be done is, as a journalist, it's good to have multiple sources. It's good to have as many other sources of information as possible, not to simply rely on what you're given or what you're sent, either from the government or from the business community. Having those other sources of information can equally help you to get closer to the truth, to help you to know who to talk to, where to go, and to match up these various versions against each other, and somehow come closer to the truth than you might have ordinarily. Like she said, in a scenario where you don't have life insurance, you're not paid properly. Even, for example, even in war zones, what you have with international organizations is that they have what they call minders. You have people who know the area very well and who are tasked with your movement and tasked with your security. And so the CNNs, the BBCs, they pay whatever they need to pay to whoever they need to pay to ensure that their people are kept alive and get to the story. For example, the CNN journalists that got deep into Liberia, really deep into Liberia, about this Ebola thing, they must have gone with people who know what obtains them, who know who to talk to, who are familiar with the surroundings to ensure that he gets in safely and gets out safely. And that is what happens anywhere else in any war zone or in any crisis area. But if you can't do that, then having multiple sources of information, multiple sources to help you get closer to the truth, it can also help. Knowing one or two people on ground can also help to help you get closer. Because the thing is, like she said, we don't do heroes here. Unfortunately, if you die, well, family doesn't have anything to fall back on. They are able to be the breadwinner, and so they are left, and so they are left all by themselves. So it's really just like a balancing act. There are journalists who want to do things the proper way, and I think that having multiple ways by which you get your information can help you do that, while also do other things, and to be there for people who who need you around. Because the simple truth,
Victor, maybe I should add.
with regard to media owners, what we are even hearing is even worse. Is what obtains really is even worse than what we said here. There are some things you cannot say here. So, that's just where I'll leave it.
Mercy, you wanted to say something? Hello? Mercy? Hello, Mercy?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. As a matter of fact, I get to do once in a while.
Okay, there goes the internet again.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, hello, all right, we can hear you now. Hello, Mercy?
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now, go ahead.
I can hear you.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say that as a matter of fact, the international media guys, away from probably the allowance for even traveling to file the story and the fact that you're going to be paid and all of that, you still get funding to look for a media fixer, and the international guy is coming with say $150 or $200 per day, and he has to stay to file that story for probably, it depends on how important the story is to them, 2 weeks, 1 month. You are paying the fixer $200 per day. Put that into consideration and calculate it. And I was telling one of my colleagues, and I'm like, well, some of us, we do these things, and she's in the media, and she was like, whoa, why don't I just resign and go and be a media fixer instead? This is someone that has a platform that is working, a very good platform, So if people are already giving out $200 per day, which you would look at and you're like, well, that's still something. But a journalist that is working in a media platform is telling you that that's really big, that's really huge. Just to, what are you fixing? Call Olukolade, ensure that he talks to Mr. B. Call the Chibok girl or whoever is involved, all the various sources that you think you need to talk to. Call the organizing at Bring Back Our Girls and ensure that they talk to the person. That's it.
Okay.
So if at that level, institutions were created and what is born out of what they're looking at, it's not like we all don't want to get these stories filed. There are lots of Nigerian journalists that will go to Chibok, but do they have the means to go to Chibok? Can they go to Chibok? So these are the questions we have to start answering. Hello?
Yeah, you were breaking while you were making your points, but major thing you were trying to say, like, things. Can you hear me? Hello, Mercy. Oh, I think our internet is back. Joachim, let me just come to you before our internet fixes up.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, Mercy. So basically, the commitment is there. That's what you're saying. But the means to push that commitment to do what you ought to do is what is in there,
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
All right, so let's just move from that. So apart from that,
Absolutely.
okay, even in the saner climes, I beg your pardon, I mean, forgive my language, but even in the developed countries, they also have all these problems. Don't you think so? Don't you think they do have all these problems?
Are you asking me or Joachim?
Oh, you.
Oh
Right.
well, of course. I'm not saying they don't have their challenges, but as is a I would say it's complete decay. Why should someone be working in an organization and the person doesn't get paid? That's why that triggers people blackmailing people just to file stories. Why should I go for an assignment and you call me aside to give me an envelope? For me, I think that is really that is an insult to start with. So you now see our journalists in Nigeria have now tweaked their personality. You have to be a journalist and a PR person. So while you're doing your journalism, you have to look for a way to do PR just so you can survive and survive very well. Or if you're not doing if you're doing journalism, you have to probably go into MC, event organizing, and writing speeches for politicians just to survive. It's survival. It's survival, and we always have that in mind. We have folks that can go all the way down to ensure that they become the Amampo of today by filing stories from the real conflict zones. But how are they going to get these stories done if they don't even have the very first means? Some of these people have families to take care of. Most of these people have people depending on them. So they have to survive. It's about survival, really. It's about survival. And the political class and those that own these platforms, they know that. So they use it against you. Like you've had cases of people telling you this platform is one of the biggest in this country. If because we don't pay you, you don't want to stay working, you know the door. Take a walk. And there's this pride with which they used to tell you these things. They are unapologetic about it because they know that if you're working for platform A and it's so big that one Mr. B wants to get his own story carried on that platform on a Monday, they know that you can make as much money as you want to make. But is that ethical? But while we are talking about ethics and morality, we also have to look at survival. That these journalists are humans, they have people to take care of them, they have people that depend on them, and they have to survive. So we have to put these things into context. But I know truly and surely that the same Nigerian journalists that worked so hard to ensure that we got to where we are in Nigeria today have done so well, but they can do even much better if we ensure that the media institutions we have in this country are well established to take care of them and to cater for their needs.
Jackie, what's your take on that?
Well, like she said, whatever challenges currently happen in the West, for example, are relatively new. Relatively new meaning the last 5 years, the last 5 to 10 years. What we are talking about in Nigeria has been going on for a long time, for probably 3 decades. And like she said, it's also a matter of degree. It gets worse and worse and worse. So you have, if you have two newspapers, 2 or 3 who happen to pay their staff as at when due, you have all these other ones who don't do that. And so there are all sorts of considerations for the individual journalist to take on board whenever he or she is doing a story or is thinking about the next step to take. So all these things are part of the issues that I'm listening against journalists today. The truth is, actual harassment of journalists has gone down over the years. It still exists, but it has gone down over the years. But what we have a rise of, like she said, economic hazards to journalists, and then the security hazards have reduced a bit, but the economic hazards are right up there, and they're only getting worse, by the day. So all of these things are things that the citizens have to also take into consideration when they of Nigerian journalism today.
All right, Joaquin, let me come back to you, Mercy. So, what would you prefer?
Okay.
Individually owned media houses or government-owned media houses?
That's a tricky question. But we have to appreciate, because if you place value on a thing, it's like buying a good book. If you place value on that book, and I come to your house to borrow the book, knowing that I might not use it well, you like, oh, Mercy, it's a good book, da da da. But you know, you don't just give it out. You don't just give out that thing that is valuable to you, and not expect the person to take it seriously. Number one, we need a system that understands that the media has to start telling our stories, and we need to start appreciating the role of the media in our society. You know, for as it is today, what we've all made our people politically aware and informed because of what is being driven by the media. People are losing focus about the core issues. Mr. A is wondering what APC is going to do next year. Mr. B is wondering what PDP is going to do. We're forgetting other issues that affect our lives, that affect our daily living, that tells us that after these 4 years, what becomes of us as a people. As a matter of fact, there were a few days ago, I was tweeting about what I think people that are going to go into, that are going to start campaigning should start considering. We already have the NIMS identification card. What is the value of that MasterCard to me? Is there going to be some level of social security added to an unemployed Nigerian? We have aged people in our community that don't have blankets. When we were in school those days, social studies, government is supposed to provide them blankets. If I'm wrong, Joachim, is supposed to provide them even medical treatment, but we don't even have it in our society. Yes. But we have billions of naira that is being accrued to different sectors. People are not even accounting for them. So when do we start asking the right questions and stop getting ourselves distracted by the political class that are only majorly interested about what concerns them and their immediate family? And this is the agenda that is supposed to be set by the media. But when you don't have a media that is supposed to focus on things like this, what do you get? You get the junk media that we are running after. You get the public relations media that we are, exactly, PDP, APC media. We get the media that we're all running after and concentrating, putting all our energies towards. Our children no longer even listen to the right programs. Our children no longer even understand what is obtained. We had lovely dramas before. What happened to the drama that we used to have? Why can't we have them back? What's the NBC doing about it? So number one, we need institutional framework, because even as a private media, you cannot do it on your own. Guess what? The independent, I'm sorry, I'm always talking about television stations, maybe because of my background. But the independent television media, look at what they've been doing now. Pastors preaching on a daily basis. I'm a Christian. I'm not against what they're doing.
For time. They
exactly. Why do you choke the airways with religion? Why choke the airways with? But that's where their major income comes from. Look at their revenue. That's where they come from. This culture. Why don't we now change the conversation to the real deal? While we are reporting stories, why don't we take it away from events-based stories? Why don't we go to the field where it's really affecting the people? Mr. A said this on a Thursday, and we're filing a story, and we're celebrating that the reporter. Oh well, that's not journalism. That's not journalism. So if we must get journalism running, number one, we need a system that understands that the media, we must start setting the pace. So that's why sometimes I laugh when people say we are Africa's largest network. Hello, are you listening to yourself? There are lots of the stories in Nigeria. I went to Berlin and I was telling people about the number of tribes and religion, the number of ethnic groups and the nature of the heterogeneity in Nigeria. And most people that have traveled the world said, Mercy, you are the first person to tell me this. Why don't we make our largest networks and empower them to do what it should be? Why don't we even create a fund for private media owners to support what they're doing? Because running it on their own with diesel and all of that, it's not easy. We have to say it as it is. I'm even talking about television. Let's go to radio. Let's even go down to newspaper owners. So these are the things. We need a system that accepts and understands the value of the media in any society. That's where we have to start from.
All right, Mercy, I think we should make you a media owner very, very soon. We should gather resources. Yeah, all right, great. But just before we continue, Seun Onibinde just joined us. Seun, good afternoon, and thank you for joining.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you, Victor. It's nice to be here again. Joining from my living bedroom, so I hope it's a great outlook. Nice to be here too. Nice.
Well, I must say I like your talking drum.
Yeah, okay, I got it from Kenya.
Oh, awesome. But we have that in Nigeria as well. You should have gotten the Nigerian one.
Don't mind me.
All right. So, by the way, that's by the way. Actually, we're looking at the dangers of being a journalist, and Mercy and Joachim have quite said a lot about the dangers. They talked about hazards on the field, and most importantly, economic hazards, which has made the judgment of reporters to be skewed in a particular way and not in the way that the profession requires or desires. But then, what is your take? I mean, it's quite a large subject, quite a very wide one, so to speak. We've heard like two different opinions, but what is yours? Let's hear yours.
Yeah, my opinion is, I think it's coming at the right time to talk about journalism. I would call myself an accidental journalist, because basically I've been working on data for a long time, and I found that I had to lace it with journalism. But once in a while, when we do things in budget, for instance, you have an event in budget and you bring journalists in to cover your event. And after you're done with the event, you expect tough, provoking questions, a bit of really of tough things they should ask you. What you get at the end of the day is, we are done. We want to start going. Where's our per diem? Where's our honorarium? And where's all our this? I had a lot of challenge around that. Why must we all do this? I had to ask Boston Tijani, who is the CC of our incubator. I asked him, why must we always give this money out for journalists? Because I was new to that space, and he said, they don't do it. They won't encourage anybody to do it. I know we did that first time we did budget. It was only Champion newspapers that wrote our story in the newspapers. So since then, I've come to this sense of, why all this gratification? Why do we have to always go around this? Are there contextual issues in journalism that we're not solving? I know there's a first problem with the pay, with the living conditions of a journalist and things around that. But the question I see some sparkling lights of excellence in that space. I see people who have won awards, who have transited to other countries to do excellent journalism, who keep doing it there, who keep raising the bar, who are getting promoted along. For example, Toyosi Ogunshe is a clear example of who I say, oh, this is a brilliant journalist. And you find that the kind of journalism I see is that people who really are satisfied with the status quo, where they all just want to be. I think classes of journalism, data journalism, we bring them in on Saturday, and we teach them how to use new tools to improve journalism, to explain journalism. And most of them, they would come, they would eat good food. You tell them to submit assignments. Nobody's going to submit assignments. So I first think the question is, most people are not even looking, you don't even understand the next steps of journalism. You don't even understand how big it will be present compared to what they are doing at the moment, which is just, where I see most times is collect press release. If you ask them, if you give them the 10,000 naira, they're fine, and it's over. Your press release in a rehearsed or in a dressed way makes the newspaper headlines, and it's over. And I don't think that's journalism. And I think that this kind of question that stems from the current issue with TB Joshua, where people received 50,000 naira. On what? You look at that session, and it was like a banter session. It was like a session where they just had come to have a party. Someone asking, what should we do right now? What should we do right now? A sense of confusion, like a severe content. That's the way we take journalism now. People, I don't believe. I don't think people are taking this thing serious. I don't feel we are even doing journalism. It's just reporting. A journalist, the first element of journalism is curiosity, a sense to explore the issues in an untypical format. And that's where you expect people to think through these issues. But when in a situation we are all walking down the narrative, we're all following to what's the end goal of what was he saying? You're just motioning to listen to what that's finally. How do you call that journalism? I personally, I feel there are people doing excellently. I read pieces and I find we read pieces like Tolu Ogunlesi, we read pieces like Toyosi. These are people who are doing journalism very right, but because they lace it with facts, they lace it with data, they explore all the angles. But if people who just take press release and run to the editor and dump it and wait for the next meal, the 10,000 naira a day, 20,000 naira a day, I think that's a survivalist strategy. It's mediocrity on the way. Yeah, that's why I say it personally.
All right. So, just apart from all that you've said now, there's also so much danger that goes with being a journalist. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the society does not help. The society does not really help, and you can't divorce these issues from the society because the danger of first being a journalist is that you could be attacked, you could be killed. We have a lot of examples of that within society. And I have my own mentor in journalism. His name is Declan Opaliki. And for a long period, has always said, no story is worth living your life. Give it your best shot. Give it your best try. Most times we don't. Most of them don't have insurance. These are the issues that we should bring to the front burner and articulate. Yeah, I don't want to mention media organizations because I can't be too sure if these are the factual parts of it. But a lot of journalists, media houses, not paying journalists very well. Going on for 5-6 months. I've heard people saying the editor tells you have a column. That's your bargaining rights. That's your bargaining power. I give you the right to use it and to earn any fee you want to earn. So the context, that's the issue we should throw up when it comes to media ethics. I'm up for people raising names, for people naming names. Which media organization does not pay? What do you pay an average journalist in your organization? Is this the standard? Do they have medical? Do they have health insurance? And those are the questions we should all ask from this. It still reeks of like a game where the people at the top just schemes off the entire revenue and just leave the guys on the ground to just seek survivalist approach to their issues. And I know journalism in Nigeria is tough to do. It's tough to do because it's all dependent on ad revenues most times. It's all dependent, and most of this, the biggest spender on ad revenues most times also still comes from government, still comes from even corporate organization who could be responsible at any particular time. So the question is, how do you strike all this balance in between? But I feel the average journalist needs to be protected beyond what it is right now, and those are the issues we should amplify, and rather than everyone justifying the rot, which has found its way through honorarium and bribes or whatever you could call it.
All right there. Mercy, let me come to you. Talking about protection. Mercy? Hello, Mercy? Okay,
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay, Sharon just made mention of protection. Whose job should that be, protecting the journalists from all these hazards?
That's my question, right?
Yeah, that's your question, Mercy.
Okay. Whose job should it be? Largely, it's like I said, it's an institution that should work, but the relevant professional organizations should also take it up. And the Nigerian Union of Journalists, which I am also fortunate to be a part of, have been going on and on and on and on to ensure that media owners take up the protection of journalists as a critical part of their organizations, but it hasn't been what I would call a success story. It's still something that is ongoing, but we can do better. If government-owned media organizations are yet to have their staff get life insurance policies to cater for their needs in the event something happens while they're caught up in the line of duty, then you start wondering, government that should take up these things, they are not even leading. So why should a private media owner that is battling with running his station with diesel, that is battling with paying all sorts in a month and ensuring that he manages to even pull the station through, why should he take the lead? So to start with, I don't like calling government all the time, but there are cases where I have to call government, where there are institutional frameworks that makes things work for you. NBC reminds you of playing a particular video that is wrong. NBC reminds you of someone saying something that shouldn't be, and they give you fine for that. Why don't we have professional body owned by government that gets to regulate, to take these things up? Why don't we have professional body that reminds you that a journalist is entitled to life insurance, and not just telling you, no, you shouldn't say this. If you say this, we are going to go back to civil war and all that they like saying to turn people off, So our media the act that was formed to work the era. So at some point we have to tweak some of these our laws and stop witch hunting those people that are coming out to talk about the state of the nation, that come to talk about what the president has done and hasn't done right. And the next thing, the guy is being picked up because they are saying, or the station is giving is given a fine for allowing the guy go on air. As a matter of fact, there are some stations that before you go on air, they have to brief you on what to say. Why don't we move away from that long age of military era that doctors what you want to say and how you want to say it, to even protecting the journalists that is ensuring you go on air and talk about these things. To even protect the journalists that ensures that whatever speeches the president is going out to say, or whatever the president is going out to talk about, the people get to hear about it. We need institutional frameworks that functions, because if institutions like the NBC and the necessary bodies that get to guide media owners and how they function have this at the back of their hearts, the next day I'm going to get my television license, they are going to sit me down and say, Mercy, if you are going to have 10 staff to run this television, you need to ensure that they have life insurance to even start with. If not, you cannot take off. If not, we're not going to give you life insurance. We need this framework that functions. That's the point. That's when people are going to take these things seriously. If you're going to build and you don't have the wherewithal to build and what it takes by the Engineering Society of Nigeria, they're not going to allow you to build. Your building project is not going to be approved. So we should also take it up even in the field of journalism. We should also take it up even in the profession itself. We have the Nigerian Bar Association. You have to go to law school before you even become a lawyer. Why don't we have institutions that function for the Nigerian journalists?
All right, Mercy. I hope those institutions will be established as soon as possible. But just before I continue, we have a new someone just joined the Hangout. Ben Cosmos, thank you for joining and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, thank you. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Malaysia.
Oh, okay, we'll get to you in a bit. But then, Joachim, Mercy just raised some issues. What's your take on that, especially talking about the institutions that needs to prepare journalists before they go into mainstream journalism? Joachim.
Yeah, well, I'm here. There are all sorts of those of the NUJ, like she said, and then there is the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria. Now, the thing is, between both, they should be able, because the Newspaper Proprietors and so far, I don't think that they have I see the NPAN as a kind of peer review kind of setup, where you have newspaper proprietors speaking, telling themselves to do better at the way they run their media houses. But that is not really in evidence right now, because they're all doing the same thing, like Mercy said, which is not paying their staff. So who will begin to preach to who? Who will begin to advise who? So all these things are part of the problem. The NUJ as well does not seem to be standing up for its members with regards to the newspaper proprietors, and then facing off with them to make sure that their people have the best deal that they can get. The proprietors at the top are very rich. They have a lot of money. They are in Transcorp Hilton today, private jets tomorrow, such and such. There are so many of those stories that one can't even. If we start to talk about them here, we'll have to do channels being for 3 hours. But the thing is, the money is there, but the employees are not seeing any of it. The media owners have better things to do with it. Apparently, they prefer to use it to organize award shows. Again, with regard to access to power, which is the reason why they set up those newspaper houses in the first place. So there's a lot of what's the word now? Internal censorship that needs to be happening. The NUJ needs members better, and the newspaper and the NPAN also needs to do a lot more with regard to the issue of peer review, which is having people, which is which is having people to do right by their employees. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you, Joaquin.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so between the NUG and the MPAN, there's really plenty of room for improvement. Hopefully they improve before the shun dies in this country completely, because there is more to life than elections. There's more to life than PDP and APC. There's more to life than Atiku, Jonathan, Edwin Clark, and all of those people. You see, the thing is, all these people, the things they say and the things they do, they don't really matter to ordinary Nigerian. That's the truth. That's the truth. The thing is, nobody really cares. You make the statements public and everything. Nobody cares. What Dokubo Asari says does not change the price of yam in the market. So there are all kinds of those things. We need to have journalism in Nigeria go back to focusing on the business in their day-to-day lives, or else then they serve at the pleasure of the Nigerian political class, which is what has been going on for 2, 3, 4 decades now.
All right, Joaquin. Well, just like you said, I hope that this issue is turned around very soon, of course, like you said, and Mercy said. But then, let me come to you, Ben. Ben, we're looking at the dangers of being a journalist in Nigeria and all over the world. Mercy, Seun, and Joachim have said a lot, talking about all those hazards that comes with being a journalist. I don't know what your take is on this, and why don't we just listen to what you have to say now?
Okay, first of all, I think I must have to commend the journalists like you who work so hard to bring information to our doorsteps. And you guys are doing a good job putting your life at the line. We've seen cases where journalists have been killed in those war zones. They were killed not because they were journalists, but they were killed because they were trying their best to see that they bring information to our doorstep. Even they go to the front line where they even know that their life is even in danger. And also for the Nigerian journalists, I think we need to do a lot more to our journalists. I don't know the kind of journalism we are practicing. Sometimes you have to ask some journalists some questions. And first of all, I must say something on this Ebola case of a thing. Before the US medical doctor was treated in the US, I think Nigerians have been able to cure a particular case of Ebola, but it was not even on the media as such. But once the United States guy is freed from the hospital, it was all over the newspaper, it was on the internet, everywhere. But our journalists are not really doing well to cover up, to create our own image, build up our own image. So we just have to leave it at the mercy of the white men, the white journalism, to tarnish our image the way they want, create all sort of manner of report on our own side, because we are giving them the room. It is the information we give to them. That is what they will work on. If we don't improve on our image, if we don't speak good about our own image, I don't think that they will do that for us. So that is what I want to say also. And secondly, for the journalists, I saw something on the BBC recently on Al Jazeera, so where we have some, I don't know where she's from, a journalist trying to cover this Boko Haram incident between Cameroon, the Cameroon military, and trying to chase the militants away back. And I've not seen any Nigerian journalists trying to do such a thing. So you guys need to work on yourself also. I'm using this medium to challenge you people to do more. I know we like our life very well. We know nobody wants to die. But at least we just have to step up the game and try to practice journalism to an international standard, so that when you're talking of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 journalists in the whole world, I think we should be able to say a Nigerian journalist is in the list. We shouldn't leave that for the BBC, the Al Jazeera, the CNN, and the ABC News, and the rest of them. So also, you people are really doing well. But for the lives of the journalists, I know it's a very hard job. We've seen journalists being picked up somewhere in Ethiopia. They're in trouble. Even an ordinary blogger is even in jail. They are also in trouble trying to report, to bring news to our doorsteps, to know what is happening in around the government, at the corridors of government, in our environment. And it's a very, very difficult job, because there are times you publish a particular news about an individual, and before you know, the security agents are after you. Sometimes you even get murder secretly. On a cold-blooded issue, you just see a journalist is being shot dead and he's dead. Okay, you can see recently about the journalist, a China journalist that died in Kano. I think it's still a fresh memory for all of us to see. He died at his duty post, where he was trying to cover up to cover up some report, and he was shot dead. So these are the issues there. And one will ask, is there any kind of package meant for the journalists who lost their life? Actually, that I don't know. You are a journalist, you should know better than me. But I think the Nigerian Union of Journalists have a better role to play in this part. There should be a kind of life insurance for our journalists to motivate them to do more. Because when he knows that if anything happens to him today, his family, his children will be properly taken care of, you will give him the morale, you will give him the more effort to do more job for you. But when he's working and he knows that if anything happens to me, nothing will happen. That one is just my case. To just come and pay condolence and say all sort of tribute and off, So that will also scare them away from giving us more report, and But when we try to encourage them the more, give them life insurance, cater for their well-being, at least they should be able to live comfortably well. They should be able to live well, at least. Not only those who follow Mr. President around, who have the privilege to follow him around, cover him in New York and wherever he's going. I think other journalists need to have the same opportunity, the same equal playing ground, the same protection, so that you can also carry them along. They can be able to do the job very well. Being a journalist is not that easy. I've seen some of them. I watch the news steady, the CNN. Is not that easy, especially those trying to cover the war zone like the Middle East case, the ISIS, and the rest of them. It's not that easy. We've seen journalists being beheaded. The one currently in Algeria is where the Algerian militant has beheaded a French national. He was also a journalist. So these things keep happening. These are people trying to bring the news to our own doorstep. They are not doing it for their own self. They are trying to bring this news so that we can also know what is happening in and outside of our own domain. We should know what is happening at the corridors of power and the rest of the whole places and the whole world. So we also have to commend people like you, and I'm calling on the National Union of Journalists also to step up their game, to streamline their activities. The way we practice journalism in Nigeria, there should be a change. We should also try to compete with other international bodies so that we can be able to speak properly. We shouldn't leave our corridors open for people like BBC to come and wind the mouth of to come and interrogate. I'll call it interrogate our Minister of Information, who talks until he has nothing to say again. I think we should leave that for our local journalists to do the job. And when they come, you give it to them what they want, so they can go and live our own countries away. They have their own problems. They won't tell us the truth. They try to pamper their own and create a very good sweet story about their own country, but the dirty side of their country they will not tell us. That is the issue there. So we should also take up this game, take up this job our own self, give them the good side of our own country, and also try to cover up our own acts. That's what I have to say.
All right. So talking about challenge, actually you joined the Hangout late. We're talking about challenging reporters or journalists in Nigeria to do more. We actually looked at, and there was a background, like there was a bit-by-bit breakdown of what journalists actually face, and probably which could have been the reasons. Probably you have to play back later on when we're done. You have to play back, but then, and I think Mercy can just give you just a bit of that background again of those things, that make journalists to hold back. And not to go out. Mercy, can you do us that honor?
Basically, it moves from the security hazards in the profession to economic hazards, and I talked more about economic hazards. It's interesting that you pointed out a lot of things that's been reported, and why we have to rely on international media to even report ourselves and to tell our stories. But largely, when you have a journalist that has to probably leave Lagos or leave Abuja to go to Chibok to file the story, and dude hasn't been paid for the past 6 to 9 months, and he has to ensure that story is filed, you start asking yourself, how is he supposed to do that? It's not like the Nigerian journalists I know wouldn't do that. They would do that. They will put all that they have in line to even, as a matter of fact, most of my colleagues would even want just salary to start with. They will go all out. Some of these people you're comparing with, they come here and our military even gives them convoy to go to Chibok. They give them protection to go to Chibok. So it's not like they just go and land in Chibok. It's a lie. Anybody that tells you that story is not being honest. They even aid their movement, and they are empowered to do that. When Chibok happened, CNN actually had a private jet that they paid for to go to Maiduguri. I'm telling you, I'm naming real life cases. How many media organizations can even charter an aircraft to ensure that the story is being filed? Who cares about that? Not just filing the story, ensuring that even our military chiefs send in soldiers to protect them, to ensure that they file the stories. So these are the questions, these are the things that we've been talking about before you joined the Hangout. So journalists that I know personally just want even the salary to even go all out to ensure that they do their job. It's not like they don't want to do their job. It's not like they want to sit down and use press releases and file stories and depend on that. As a matter of fact, the dependence on press releases, journalism, is even affecting journalists. Journalists go to an assignment, like Shehu rightly pointed out. The only thing the guy is thinking of is how he's going to collect the kwa. I'm sorry, that's the term for brown envelope. You call it kwa. So that's the only thing the guy thinks of, like, oh man, you call the guy for an assignment. I've had to help to fix events for lots of people, especially NGOs. They'll tell you, Mercy, please help us put together a team together to come file this. I say, yo, I'm sorry, my friends will not come. That's the truth. If you're not going to give them something, if you're not, because if I call them, they will say, babe, you know the story now. Well, we can't go back to this issue. So that's the reality. Let's not talk about an ideal situation. Let's talk about the reality that we have on ground. That's the reality on ground. A lot of people would want to go all out to ensure that they do their job and do their job well. But hello, even while they are filing stories, even within Lagos or within Abuja, the media, your news manager is telling you, you're in probably, you're living in probably Ejigbo. Your news manager is calling you from Ejigbo to go to Lekki to file a story in Lekki, and he's not telling you that the office driver is supposed to pick you from Ejigbo to go to Lekki. If you know Lagos very well, you know the distance between Ejigbo and Lekki. That's just two-way long journey on its own, and you have to use your money to go to Lekki to file that story. I'm not talking about the fact that you're being owed 9 months' salary. Just because you want relevance in that paper, you want your name to always be there, you want to go to an assignment and someone takes you seriously, you're like, oh, well, you write for this medium. Let's place value on you. So you have to even use your own personal money to file in stories. So these are the hazards. These are the challenges. We're not even asking about big things like even giving you allowances to ensure that you file that story. That's not even what we're asking about. That's not even what we're asking of. We're even asking of the very basics that you are entitled to. The very basics. We're not even talking about pension. We're not even talking about allowances. We're talking about just salary. The one you promised when you gave me the job, that message, this is what you're going to be paid. This is what you're entitled of. You're not giving me that. And hey, who am I going to run to? Or who am I running to? So a lot of people sit down, especially online, and they say, oh, well, our journalists are lazy. As a matter of fact, if you're not being paid for 10 months, go home and sit down. Sit down and do what? Look at your wife or look at your kids. So the fact that you need relevance is that you keep filing the stories and struggling to ensure that you file the stories. You go for an assignment and journalists ask very stupid questions. See, that brown envelope is even affecting your ability to think. You can no longer think smart. You cannot even think creatively. There are times I go for an assignment. Before I go for an assignment, I'm already thinking, how am I supposed to file this story? What angle? Like Shehu rightly pointed out. But when the only thing that you think about is how you're going to buy the next Gary and ensure that your wife doesn't insult the hell out of you, that you are a man and you cannot feed the family, you start thinking about, oh, well, that's the only thing you know. When somebody calls you, there's an assignment, you say, how far? As a matter of fact, now, you don't even have to go to the venue again because there's no time to waste. You just ask the person calling you, money day. If money no day, I beg, I know they come.
Mercy. You've given Ben quite a lesson, and I'm sure he understands what Nigerian journalists actually face. While we were talking, Joachim was nodding in concurrence, Shehu as well, but I noticed Ben was quite calm and he was like, oh, this is actually what is happening, and probably this is why Nigerian journalists are not all out to file all the stories like he wants them to. But then moving forward, Shehu, let me come to you. People say there was a global conspiracy to downplay the effectiveness of Nigerian journalists. Do you believe that?
I don't believe that. I think the Nigerian journalists are not immune from the challenges of society as it is. And it's a shame that like an organization such as the National and the NUJ, Nigerian Union of Journalists, who's supposed to be like that body advocating for their welfare, advocating for standard practices, doesn't do that. That's where the big challenge even starts from. So I don't think nobody wants to downplay journalists. I feel number one, it's if we want to really get journalism done the way it should be done, we must first define what's the standard. The standard is there. It's not because we have a whole lot of money to do it. It's not because when we find standard even starts from How are we going to get the stories? Which kind of stories are we? Which angles are we bringing out these stories from? How are we even coming up as a common front to talk to maybe possibly the military forces, the military authorities to go ahead and write stories? For instance, maybe I work for Premium Times and we are about to go to Chibok. Nobody might listen to you if we have a front which is strong, which is bold enough to engage with the military authorities and say, this is, we want to go to Chibok and do some own investigation. There was a time there were issues of human rights crisis in Burma, in Maiduguri, and Amnesty International was in top human rights organizations globally was in. I don't think they ever took journalists down there to go and even investigate the issues. So the problem is we don't even, the body we're supposed to be like in defense of upholding the ethics does not even do enough job in itself. And that's where the challenge even starts from. And so that's where we can't even get. So everybody's like this serious competitive space, and we don't even understand that there's a whole lot more we can even do about collaboration and getting attention from institutions like the military, like she said. So that's one challenge I see. I think one of the challenge also maybe partly to the media owners. I feel it's tested. I worked in Next for a while in Lagos, and I know how I didn't stay for too long, but I know within 1-2 years it's packed up. The challenge is a lot of people will tell you in reality that the media in Nigeria sustains on patronage, sustains on having a cool outlook with the political class. And I mean, people draw me to my ears that there was a Concord and Punch story in 1992. There were some issues and the papers had to go bankrupt. I don't understand in that context. But a lot of people will tell you they have to be in business in such that way that challenge also stands. So sometimes you find that what I see is that the top guys at the end are from click with the top guys in politics and corporate sector, and it looks like the guys at the floor of the whole cadre are just trying to fend for themselves. And we're supposed to improve this imbalance. The people can't do it themselves. The media can't do it themselves. Someone is the union who's supposed to create standards and ethics. But let's crowdsource how much does a journalist earn in Nigeria. Let's define how much is supposed to be paid. Let's look at the whole mathematics of this whole thing. Does it really work? Do we even need as much media organizations like Nigeria? That's why sometimes you find that who owns media stations, except the very neutral ones or the traditional ones. You find that a lot of politicians are also opening up media stations right now because it looks like you can sustain your entire propaganda through it. So this one has to come to that. And at the end of the day, you find that when such people are out of government, I don't want to mention it. There's one along Lagos by the express road, if I have not mentioned it. A lovely edifice he built on that road, was in government, started a media organization, is out of government, the next thing, the media house is off. So the question really comes to that basics. If we're not going to do it professionally, if it's going to be about sustaining the political class or pushing out propaganda, we can't get board class. Nobody's going to respect us for that. But if we're going to make sure that we come as a collaborative force to even challenge institutions, to even get some support from institutions to go to where we think international organizations are doing, then we'll get the results that we want. Yes, we would. That's right.
All right, Joachim, you look like you want to say something.
That story that Shehu is referring to was about IBB, and it was authored by Dr. Yomi, who ended up spearheading the investigative journalism arm of 234 Next. It was about IBB in 1992. As the story came out, Abiola, who wanted to become president and who was friends with IBB, asked him and his colleagues to apologize. They didn't apologize, and so the four of them quit. And then South Africa again. It's not Tempo. The one before Tempo. So they all left. The four of them, they left together and they set up a new paper. So what he's talking about has been going on for a long time. When media owners, whose only job is access to power, come up against a brick wall because somebody in power whose relationship they don't want to jeopardize doesn't like what they've put out. So journalistic establishments that are run in a professional and business-like manner. If we don't have this, if we have people who only survive, perhaps someone doesn't like what you do, 1992, which was over 20 years ago, is still happening today, and it continues to happen. You read stories that don't have even 1% of truth. 1%. 1%. There is no truth at all whatsoever. For example, the This Day story about Sanusi and some contract he gave some company. That company does not exist. There was no link between Sanusi and that company at all. In fact, the next day, This Day had to publish a retraction to that story. It is typical standard PR fare. No verification is nothing. You have people, if we had a functioning court system, for example, they could have fined This Day for any amount of money, because it is serious libel. It's libelous. It's libelous in that there was no fragment of truth in that story till today. So these are all the things that keep happening. We need newspaper houses and media organizations in general that are run professionally, and we need their media owners who are interested in journalism and not in power, and not in access to power, not in patronage, not in contracts. Because all of these people, when you begin to look at the companies who get contracts on state and local government and federal levels, and you check the ownership behind those dummy companies, they often retrace in one way or the other back to media owners. Because media owners don't have just one source of income. They have their hands in contracts. They have their hands also in partnerships with companies that are also looking for contracts. They have, so if we were to trace this tree, if we were to draw this family tree, as it were, I don't know if to call it a family tree or a tree of something else. It's like a tree of corruption, sharp. If we were to trace this tree and draw all the linkages, you will find that nearly everybody is involved in this at one level or the other. And so you get no stories that matter. You get nothing that matters. What you have is Asari Dokubo said, Atiku said, Jonathan said, and all those people who said, and nobody cares. It doesn't affect the price of statistics. It does not affect price of rice. So all these things are issues. The sooner we have media organizations run like this, the sooner all of these complaints that we are having can reduce. Because we really cannot go on like this. Because right now, what you have is that it's not just government that misbehaves. Businesses have so many unethical practices that they engage in. Who are those who are supposed to tell what goes on in these businesses? Who are those who are supposed to hold these businesses to account? Who are those who are supposed to tell what goes on behind all these NGOs, one NGO or the other, one scam or the other, matters or issues are even one of the least. How about our local government? So much. There is so much. But nobody cares. They're only interested in the next contract, the next meeting with whoever it is, the charge computing, the next private jet they're going to do, the next award show, the next whatever it is. And so until we stop things like this, until we have people who do journalism for the sake of journalism, for the sake of society, and run their media organizations like proper businesses, we will continue to complain about things like this. We will continue to all the time. All
right, Joachim. We're actually running out of time. Ben, I'm sure you're convinced Nigerian journalists are not just lazy, but there are some actions that are actually putting them at bay, and of course they have their own.
Victor, sorry. One last thing.
Okay.
There are bad journalists. Let's know.
Exactly.
There are corrupt journalists. Okay, but the situation is such that we don't even know who is corrupt because they are corrupt, and who is corrupt because they have fewer options within which to live decent lives. So we don't know who is who yet. That's the first thing. So if we have a better scenario, we will know who is corrupt because they are corrupt, who is bad because they are bad, and who is just bad simply because, as we say here, now condition make it is bad. So all these things are there. There are bad journalists. Let's not make any mistake. They are the ones that are corrupt. Just like you have corrupt police officers who are corrupt just because. So we cannot differentiate them yet because we don't even know who is who. That's the truth.
All right, Joachim. Ben, you wanted to say something before Joachim came in?
Yeah, that was what I wanted to say. I said not all journalists are lazy. We have those who are really out there to do their job, to do what they are called to do, and you have to also differentiate. There are people who like journalism. They go into it because of the love and passion they have for it. Not those who came into journalism because of the money they want to make and the fame and all that. You know, when you just like having someone who is a teacher whose passion is to teach. You know, when he's doing that job, he's doing it with every joy and every sense of humanity in him. And when they are teaching, you try to understand them very well than those who came into the profession because of what they think they can get out of it. You know, these are two ways some things we have to differentiate them. What I'm trying to say is that we need to step up our games. The Nigerian Union of Journalists also need to step up their games to streamline the actions of journalists sometimes. You know, because journalism is a tool, is one of the tools that you use for any economy, for any government to grow. You need the journalists out there to do. You know, they have a lot of games, they have a lot of things to play, a lot of roles to play in reporting criminal cases, corruption cases in government. You know, trying to bring out the loopholes we have there. You know, we need, just like this recent 9.3 million saga of a thing. At least, if not for the journalists in there, I don't think we'll be able to know the real truth about it. Though it's still ups and down. But at least the guys who took to that, who reported that incident, I have to commend them for doing just that, for doing what they did. You know, like what he has said, some journalists are like some politicians are now setting up outlets on their own. You know, everybody wants to be in the game so that you can report good image about him and all that because of all what they think they can get from the game. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying all of them are lazy. No, not all of them are lazy, at least, but some are in there to do what they are really called to do. But the National Union of Journalists have to do something. They need to do something. They need to really do something. It's on their soldiers to speak for the journalism. At least since you have a good union, a very strong one for that matter, you need to speak. At least sometimes you need to speak out to the government, speak out to the relevant bodies to know this is your pain, this is what you people are passing through. You know, don't just keep silent. Also, you don't just have to keep silent because of one or two things, and if you don't say it out, your salaries won't come. Sometimes you just have to say the truth the way it is. You know, but the problem we have here is that some of us don't want to say the truth. We just want to take side on where we think something is flowing. Whenever there's milk and honey flowing from that angle, everybody just takes side in that place. But sometimes you just have to speak out the truth so that these people know your pains. This is what you're going through. This is what you're passing through. You just have to speak out. Don't just keep silent.
All right, Ben. Just in wrapping up, of course, Mercy, you said the opening prayer. So
yeah, I want to just say a few things, yeah? Like the last speaker said, we have, and Joachim also said that, we have criminals in the profession. As a matter of fact, they've been classified. Victor, I don't know, you should know this. They call them PCPC. I don't know what that means. I don't know who brought up that term. You go to an assignment and the guy tells you he works with the Sky newspaper. He or she works with they are always affiliated to newspapers. That's the weird thing. He or she works with the Eagle Hands newspaper. You're like, why is the Eagle Hands? Who are they? You know. And look at it this way. It's one profession where every time, I'm sorry, I don't want to use terrible words, just jump into the profession and say, oh, well, I want to be a journalist. There's free money to get from every assignment I go to, you know. So they now create names out of these things and they move. If you see them, they have their own clique, kind of. So when you go for an assignment, you've invited the people you want to come cover the assignment. You now see this set of people, they are either 5, 10, 15, you know, and they say, madam, how far? We heard you are the one that organized this event, you know, and they stand there and ensure that you give them something. If you don't give them, they won't go. Now that's another classification of journalists that they are not even journalists, they are criminal. But we have all Nigeria. You go for an assignment and you see a journalist. He's covering a face scarf that is owned by a media company A. His t-shirt is company B. His singlet is company C. His trousers is company is a souvenir he got. So now all what he's putting onto his shoes, they are all souvenir. So as one who should respect the profession, when you see people like that, you're like, what the hell? Where's he coming from? You know, his entire body is a brand of different companies. As a matter of fact, he's not even wearing just one company, he's wearing over 10 companies. And you're looking at him and you feel sorry for him, you feel pity for him. And I'm talking about people that are even working in different media organizations, not even the criminals we are talking about. So as we wrap up, we should also have in mind that, and those that are listening and those respected organizations that should listen, if we don't take this profession seriously, it can make or mar the Nigerian society.
All right, Mercy, thank you. I'm afraid that will be the last contribution on this hangout. I want to thank all of you for joining. It was a very interesting discussion. Joachim, thank you. You're in Lagos. Seun Onigbinde, you're also in Lagos. Mercy, you're in Abuja. Benjamin, you're in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Actually, if you hadn't joined this hangout, this would have been the second all-Nigerian hangout Channels Beam would have been organizing for its over 1 year of existence. It's quite sad that Nigerians in Nigeria do not join, I think, due to the issue of bandwidth. But I think that's a discussion for another day. However, thank you very much for joining. I am Victor Matthias, and again, it is a Channels Beam Google Plus Hangout.